All right, I'm going to make this one short and sweet. Kind of off the cuff, but I did prepare a little bit of material. This week at Bungie, 8/11/22. This was a banger TWAB. I think Mercules was at the helm for this one. So shout out to Mercules. It looks like you're doing great work there. So now I went on Notepad and just quickly typed out the highlights here. And I'm not going to read any of this verbatim, just going to go through the things that I thought were really significant. We have in Season 18, Sniper Rifle Flinch. First of all, Bungie addressing it is huge, but they're looking into reducing snipers' abilities to shoot through flinch, which is huge. Actually lets me challenge lanes, and it makes a limb not feel like a snooze fest. Then we have Season 18 Shotgun RNG, which means that shotguns might have a more predictable spread pattern. Maybe it's going to be like Counter-Strike, or I don't know if Valorant has it. I think Apex has it, where it is a fixed pattern every time. And this will completely change the shotgun meta. And maybe something like Found Verdict won't be the best in slot, or it maybe, like, for example, Rog and Hild with less range will have a more favorable pattern, but Found Verdict with more range will have a less favorable pattern, and they'll kind of equal out. Anyway, we'll talk about this more in the future whenever we see it. The big one that everybody was waiting for is damage resist changes, which includes Omnioculus. Let's go find it on the document here. There we go. They changed the tiers of resistance. So Omni at tier 4, which was 25%, is getting reduced to 10%. So across the board, damage resistance is going down, which is great because that puts power of the primary weapon back in our hands, and that's a lot more fun. Okay, now hidden weapon stats are visible now, like recoil direction, aim assist, aerial effectiveness. That's going to be great. It's going to help so many new players start to get into build crafting. What else? We have the Skulking Wolf origin trait. I know this may seem like a pretty weird one to highlight out of all this stuff in the TWAB. Skulking Wolf, redesigned to activate on kills while at low health, which means that if you read it in game, you will go off the radar if you land a kill while at low health, which is kind of crazy. I want to show you something in my Destiny item manager here. I'm not going to dox my alt account, but my alt account has a 10 out of 10 finite impactor. It is right here. So what's unique about this gun is it has a very high airborne effectiveness stat at 16 base. Add extended mag on it, which is a beneficial perk for the roll on it. I actually made a video on this roll, so you can search finite impactor cami cakes and it should pop up there. I'll try to link it in the description if I remember. But Slideways and Focus Fury is a very synergistic combo because you have multiple chances to proc Focus Fury. I used to think Suro Synergy is the way, but the problem is if you reload, it breaks Focus Fury, so you want to go Skulking Wolf anyway. Now that Skulking Wolf works and you can go off radar, this is huge. Maybe I won't need Gemini Jester for every class. I don't know. I really hope this is noticeable in game. We got a Lord of Wolves rework. I could read the specifics, but it's pretty much a nerf. Here you go. I see the Dead Man's Tale one. I'm going to end the video on that. In Season 18, there is going to be a bow swap nerf. We don't know exactly what that is. Season 18, Trace Rifle ease of use is getting improved. And while I have the floor here, let's talk about Trace Rifles and Auto Rifles. They suck. They are so bad in PvP. Reason why is because you need an open line of sight to challenge, but they have hand cannon distance as their range. They have an okay time to kill. And the just damage model of full auto, low damage isn't good compared to hand cannons, high damage, low fire rate playing cover. It's not the same. They're in two completely different universes. And so Trace Rifles have double the problem of being both a special weapon with limited ammo and not too many advantages to boot. Sure, 100 aim assist and 100 stability on some of these traces is incredible. Sure, Aegir Scepter has a secondary effect of slowing targets after you kill. But overall, compared to a shotgun, fusion, sniper, grenade launcher, Trace rifles suck. And I think what they need to be competitive is they need aim assist in the air. They need to just have a 100 inherent airborne effectiveness stat right off the rip. And I think that's going to make them compete because that is the special utility of them. Unlike auto rifles where you have to build into the AE stat, trace rifles are just good out of the box, similar to precision hand cannons. Trace rifles are some of my favorite weapons in the game, but if you play competent opponents, you won't really get away with anything because if you challenge the long lane, you get sniped and you can't cross a corner because a shotgun might be behind it. So you always need to wait for your nade cooldowns to clear you a path. More intrinsic champion mods on exotics. Lemonarch, Overload, Thunderlord, Overload, Malfeasance, Unstoppable, Wishender, Anti-Barrier, Tiku's, something, Acreus, Trench Barrel, Callus Mini Tool, and Mida Mini Tool get a zoom buff or something like that. Just a couple changes. Fighting Lion actually gets its 5%. Glaive consistency and exotic armor interaction. So I think you get like Necrotic Grip, Karnstein, Feedback Fence to work with the Glaive. The Glaive consistency is the big up here, though there is no way that Glaives are not going to get a fat nerf in the future. You're going to see tomorrow's vid has my Titan Glaive build, which is super oppressive. So just keep that in mind. No, that's not what I wanted to click. We are going to go to Dead Man's Tale because I think that's the final thing I really want to talk about here. So, I was talking to my stream yesterday, had a pretty not productive PvP session, but a fun one. And so I made a list of my favorite weapons in the game off the cuff. I just did this in a minute. Didn't really have to think hard about it. So I did a 10, and then I did a 20 because I feel like some of these are questionable that they weren't in the top 10. Maybe these are like the honorable mentions. So number one, without a doubt, is DMT. Why? Because it gives you full map coverage. It's a high impact weapon and it has very accurate hipfire. These are like all my favorite things in Destiny. This is a weapon that your player skill over time can take you the distance. You don't have to get lucky to slay out with DMT. You just make good decisions and it'll carry you the rest of the way. Fighting Lion 2, Last Word 3 because of hipfire, BXR 4 because of hipfire, Agers because it replaces a super, Horde because it's like Counter-Strike utility, Hawk because it counters the healing meta and gives me an alternate win condition, Illumina because I'm a support player at best, Crimson because it lets you be relentless, Without Remorse because it counters Titans, Forerunner because Halo, Hothead Info Stick, Under Your Skin consistency, Igneous Hammer, high impact weapon, Telesto Classic, NEOD Classic, Frozen Orbit because of body shotting back in the day, but also because I genuinely like the weapon model, Drang because it's the only sidearm, Biting Winds because of Swashbuckler, and Cold Denial because of Zoom. So all that being said, there's a theme here. Dead Man's Tale is my number one for a great reason, and it is getting a rework. So I'm going to read this verbatim because this is maybe the most important part of the TWAB for me. The Cranial Spike perk was causing issues with unintended damage scalers against players and generally felt unpredictable both to use and to fight against. We're going to go back on this exact quote here. Reading on. It also wasn't quite landing the hip-firing cowboy rifle fantasy as strongly as we wanted to, so we reworked it to lean more into fast-firing hip-fire. So they changed Cranial Spike's effect. Cranial Spike no longer buffs damage versus players. Instead, it grants increased reload, aim assist, and range per stacks. It still grants additional damage versus PvE combatants. Upon reaching a max stack of Cranial Spike, the Catalyst will now increase hip-fire RPM by 50, which means it will fire at 180 RPM, but will deal reduced damage per bullet for a 20% decrease. I'm not 100% sure on the math on how this is actually going to turn out in Destiny because of all the rounding and shit, but I can imagine it's going to be somewhere between 64 and 68, which means that it is not going to 3-tap Guardians if you hit the perk. And this is my problem with it. They just said it generally felt unpredictable both to use and to fight against. To me, it felt very predictable. Maybe with the rare instance that if I'm aiming center of their forehead in the strongest part of the aim assist cone, sometimes it won't hit a yellow number. But that's kind of what you accept if you're a hipfire player. You want to play really tight, really mobile to cover, that type of thing. So it felt predictable to me because I am going for a 2-tap. I'm trying to build Cranial Spike 5 and combo a damage booster to 2-tap. I'm trying to play cover tight to take advantage of its hard-hitting damage model. So I use Cranial Spike almost every single match, almost every other gunfight. This 180 RPM change is going to kind of kill it for me. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to pop shot, which means that Snapshot now becomes maybe the best perk on Deadman's Tale because you can build into the 3-tap. So if I pop a Cranial Spike, it's going to be 180 RPM while hip firing. But when I'm aim down sights, it's going to be the 120 RPM model. So what I can do is I can aim down sights for the first shot and then pop into hip fire for the next two. And I think that's what I'm going to have to do. I overall don't like this change. This is a pretty harsh knee-jerk reaction to me. But I will let it play out and I will try it and I will see if I like it. Just overall, it almost feels like I'm being punished for activating Cranial Spike, not rewarded. I would honestly like to see it drop to a 150 RPM fire rate, but hit like, I don't know, 72 to 75 damage, something like that. Especially considering like Jade Rabbit hits what, 74 right now, something like that. Not even considering the perk. Anyway, the more I think about this DMT change, the more I dislike it. Although I understand something had to happen because in my opinion, it's not only my favorite weapon, it's also maybe the most powerful weapon in the sandbox. No Time to Explain is also nipping at his heels. So yeah, I don't like it, but I can see how they came to this conclusion. And I hope that they reconsider the 180 RPM and maybe bump it to 150 RPM in the future. Because I don't feel like this makes it feel more predictable and easier to fight against. It just feels worse. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this little TWAB recap for me. There is more juice in this TWAB, but I just hit the highlights that I thought were really awesome. So, I got this video out of the way. If you ask about this on stream, I am linking you this video.